Death is always tragic, but sometimes the way it happens is so bizarre, it's hard to believe it's even real. In this video, we're diving into 5 true stories of people who met their end in the dumbest ways imaginable. These weren't criminals or daredevils, just regular folks who either made one really bad decision or found themselves in the absolute worst place at the worst time. It was a warm July day in 2019 in the quiet city of Erzurum, Turkey, a place where life usually moved at a steady, predictable pace. But for 24-year-old Zafer Kuzu, things had taken a turn. He'd recently been convicted for injuring someone. Not enough for prison time, but enough to land him with community service. An inconvenience, sure, but hardly the end of the world. Still, for Zafer, even that was too much. He didn't want the hassle. He didn't want to serve his time, and that's when a reckless idea began to grow in his mind. A shortcut, a way out. All he had to do, he thought, was get hurt badly enough to land in a hospital bed. No service, no responsibility. Problem solved, or so he believed. The plan was as outrageous as it was dangerous. Zafer enlisted 2 friends, an 18-year-old known only as FY and another named FYT. Together, they crafted a scheme that sounded more like a twisted prank than real life. Zafer would strap 2 pillows to his back, as if that would somehow protect him, and FY would shoot him with a shotgun at close range. It sounds insane, because it was insane. Shotguns don't fire a single bullet. They unleash a spray of pellets, each one capable of tearing through flesh. Pillows? They were never going to stop that kind of force, but Zafer was convinced. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was pride, or maybe he just didn't think it through. Either way, he stood there, ready. FY raised the shotgun and pulled the trigger. The blast was instant and brutal. Zafer dropped like a stone. The makeshift padding had done nothing. His body was torn apart by the impact. Panic set in. His friends rushed to help, calling for aid, trying to undo the damage, but it was already too late. Before they could even leave the house, Zafer was gone, dead, over community service. When authorities arrived, the scene was chaotic. The shotgun was seized. FY was arrested on the spot. FYT was taken in for questioning, and Zafer's body was sent to Istanbul for a forensic autopsy. As the investigation unfolded, the full scope of the plan came to light, and no one could believe what they were hearing. A young man, so determined to dodge a minor punishment, had risked everything and lost. In court, FY faced serious charges. His life had changed in an instant. FYT, while released on bail, remained entangled in the case, but no legal outcome could undo what had happened. No sentence could rewind the clock or make sense of the senseless. Zafer's death hit hard, not because he was a criminal or reckless thrill-seeker, but because he was just a normal guy who made one horrifyingly bad decision. One moment of foolishness, one act of desperation, had spiraled into tragedy. It's a haunting reminder that sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't the punishment we face, but the lengths we'll go to avoid it.
A woman in China dropped her brand new cell phone into a cesspit while using the bathroom, and her chivalrous and somewhat insane husband climbed into the pit to get the phone back.
It was supposed to be an ordinary visit. In 2014, a woman had traveled to Xi'an City in China to see her husband's family. There was nothing unusual about that day until something small, something seemingly insignificant, turned everything upside down. She had just finished using the outdoor open pit toilet when it happened. Her phone, brand new, worth about 2,000 yuan, roughly $320, slipped from her hands and vanished into the pit below. For a brief moment, it was just frustration. A lost phone, an expensive mistake. But then that frustration turned into determination. She wanted it back, and that decision would change everything. She called for her husband, and without hesitation, without thinking of what was below, he jumped in. But the second he landed, everything went wrong. The air down there wasn't just foul, it was toxic. A thick cloud of poisonous fumes from human waste hit him instantly. He collapsed. No screams, no struggle, just silence. His mother, watching in panic, didn't stop to think. She acted on instinct, on desperation. She jumped in after him, trying to pull her son to safety, but the fumes claimed her just as quickly. Another body, motionless. Now, 2 people, her husband and her mother-in-law, were down there unconscious, and the woman, heart pounding, terrified beyond belief, made the same desperate choice. She climbed in after them, hoping she could do what the others couldn't, but the moment the air hit her lungs, her body gave out. She fell. It was turning into a nightmare. Her father-in-law, standing above the pit, watched everything unfold in horror. His family, one by one, disappearing into the darkness. He tried calling for help, but there was no time. Overcome by panic, he jumped in too, and he was gone just as fast. The entire family, 4 people, were now unconscious, piled inside a toxic sewage pit, all because of a dropped phone. Neighbors heard the screams. They came running, horrified at the scene. Some brought ropes, others just acted on adrenaline, trying to save the family before it was too late. One brave man tried to go in himself, and even he collapsed from the fumes. It was chaos, desperation, a nightmare unfolding in real time. One by one, the bodies were pulled out, but time had already stolen too much. The woman's husband and his mother were gone, dead, their lives cut short in a place no one should ever die. The woman herself, her father-in-law, and 2 of the neighbors were rushed to the hospital, fighting for their lives. Critical condition, no guarantees, all of it over a phone. Authorities later said the family had been inside the pit for only 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That was enough. That was all it took. The fumes, hydrogen sulfide, methane, ammonia, were so potent, so deadly they didn't even have a chance. The news of the tragedy rippled through the town like a shockwave. People couldn't comprehend it. A lost phone, a family wiped out. The woman's uncle, numb with grief, could only ask, "What are we supposed to do now?" And no one had an answer. This wasn't just an accident. It was a chain reaction of desperation and instinct, one that no one could stop once it began. No time to think, no time to process, just one terrible moment after another. The phone, the thing that set it all off, was never found, but it no longer mattered. What was lost that day could never be replaced. The survivors were left with scars that went far deeper than the body. The neighbors, the family, the entire community, they all carried the weight of what happened. A haunting reminder that tragedy doesn't always come with warning signs. Sometimes it starts with something as simple as a dropped phone and ends with silence. This wasn't just a freak accident. It was a chilling, devastating lesson in how quickly life can spiral out of control, how one small moment can lead to the unimaginable, and how love, instinct, and panic can push people into places they were never meant to go.
In a shocking incident from Jaipur, a woman, along with her lover, was caught on CCTV carrying her husband's body on a bike through the market.
It was a quiet Sunday afternoon in Jaipur, December 12, 2021. The kind of day where everything feels still, where nothing seems out of place. But behind the closed door of one modest apartment, something was brewing. Something that would shatter lives in a matter of seconds. Mohsen was 29. Originally from Uttar Pradesh, he had spent the last 2 years living in Jaipur with the woman he loved and her young daughter. But theirs wasn't a fairy tale love story. She had left her husband for him and vanished from her old life to start fresh by Mohsen's side. The two had tried to disappear, to build something new, but the past wasn't done with them. Her husband never stopped searching, not for her, not for their child. And on that December afternoon, he finally found them. What happened when he walked through that door remains a mystery. No one knows exactly what was said, what words passed between the man whose wife had left and the man she had chosen instead. But whatever was spoken, it was enough to send Mohsen into a spiral of pure panic. For 2 years, he had lived with the dread of this moment. He had managed to avoid it, pretend it wouldn't come. But now, it was here, and rather than face it, Rather than speak or fight or run, he turned to the balcony, 5th floor, and jumped. The sound of his body hitting the ground echoed across the building. The woman screamed. She ran to him, begging him to hold on, to stay awake. She rushed him to SMS Government Hospital, her hands shaking, blood on her clothes. But the fall had done its work. Mohsen's injuries were too severe. He died later that night, never regaining consciousness. The next day, his lifeless body was sent for autopsy, then returned to a family still trying to understand how everything had gone so horribly wrong. But the story didn't stop there. The woman, the one he had risked everything for, and her estranged husband, they were gone, vanished. Authorities couldn't find them. No leads, no traces, just silence. Like ghosts, they disappeared into the city, leaving behind only confusion, grief, and questions that no one could answer. The police pieced together what they could. Mohsen hadn't been attacked. He hadn't been pushed. He had simply panicked. Faced with a situation he had feared for years, he chose what he thought was his only escape. But it wasn't freedom he found, it was death. He and the woman had just moved into a new apartment near NRY Circle. They thought they could finally breathe, but the peace they were chasing lasted only days. Then came the knock on the door. Then came the end. His family was shattered. How could someone jump instead of face a man? Why had he been so afraid? Was it guilt? Shame? Something else entirely? No one knew. And the people who might were gone. This wasn't just a tragedy. It was a mystery. A love story twisted by fear. A confrontation that never happened. A man's final decision made in a flash, with no second chances. And now, with those final witnesses gone, the truth may never fully come to light. Only one thing is certain. One desperate moment destroyed everything, and the silence it left behind is deafening.
In a tragic turn of events in 1992, Greg Austin Gingrich met his untimely demise at the Grand Canyon.
It was supposed to be just another adventure. A father, his teenage daughter, and a trip to one of the most breathtaking places on Earth, the Grand Canyon. It was 1992, and Greg Austin Gingrich, known for his humor and big personality, was doing what he always did best, making people laugh. He and his daughter had always shared that bond. Jokes, silliness, pranks. That day was no different. Or at least it wasn't supposed to be. The canyon stretched out endlessly before them, a stunning ancient scar carved into the earth. But behind its beauty lurked danger. The cliffs were sharp, steep, and merciless. One wrong move out here didn't mean a scrape or a twisted ankle, it meant death. But Greg wasn't thinking about that. He was thinking about a joke. Standing near the edge of a guard wall, he spotted a small rock ledge below. An idea sparked. Classic Greg. He would pretend to fall. Just a harmless stunt. A quick scare, a laugh. Then he'd land on the ledge, pop back up, and say, "Gotcha." He wanted a memory, a reaction, something to talk about later. So he stumbled, flailed, gave a performance worthy of a stage. But his daughter, used to these antics, wasn't fazed. She didn't even turn around. She just kept walking, probably rolling her eyes, waiting for him to catch up. But Greg didn't catch up, because the rock ledge he thought he'd land on wasn't where he thought it was. It was farther, much farther. As he slipped from the edge, expecting a safe landing, he instead began to fall, and fall, almost 400 feet down. His daughter didn't know, not right away. Maybe she waited a minute. Maybe she finally turned to ask where he was. But the laughter never came. No footsteps, no voice, just silence. When park rangers arrived, they found Greg's body at the bottom of the canyon. The man, who had just been joking with his daughter, gone in an instant. What was supposed to be a light-hearted prank turned into something unthinkable. A mistake so small, so quick, it barely seemed real. And now his daughter, who had grown up laughing at his jokes, was left in a world without them. Left to carry the memory of that moment, the edge of that cliff, and the soundless space where his voice should have been. This wasn't recklessness. Greg wasn't a thrill-seeker or a daredevil. He was a dad trying to make his kid laugh. But the Grand Canyon doesn't forgive missteps. It doesn't care how confident you are, or how many times you've joked near the edge before. One wrong judgment, one misplaced step, that's all it takes. Greg's story isn't just about a tragic fall. It's about how fast things can go wrong when we forget that nature isn't part of the joke. The canyon is awe-inspiring, yes, but it demands respect, and it gives no second chances. That day, a daughter walked away from the edge of a canyon, but she didn't walk away whole. She left something behind, something no one could ever get back. A father, a moment, a life, and all it took was one bad joke.
Tragedy at the Pittsburgh Zoo on Sunday. A 2-year-old boy was killed when he fell into an exhibit of endangered African dogs. His mother had put him up on a railing for a better look, and then the boy lost his balance.
It was a quiet Sunday, November 4th, 2012, when Jason and Elizabeth Durkosh brought their 2-year-old son Maddox to the Pittsburgh Zoo and PPG Aquarium. For Maddox, the world was full of wonder. His tiny hands gripped his parents' fingers as they explored the zoo, his eyes wide with curiosity. He especially loved animals. Trucks and animals. Those were his favorite things. The family made their way to the African painted dog exhibit, a striking display perched above an enclosed habitat. From a raised wooden platform, visitors could look down into the pit where 11 of the rare, wild dogs roamed. There were signs warning about safety, reminders to be cautious, but it wasn't unusual to see parents lift their kids up to get a better look, and that's what Elizabeth did. She hoisted Maddox onto the railing, 4 feet high, wanting to give him a better view of the animals below. It was a moment of love, a moment to share a thrill, a view. She held him tightly, the way any mother would, but in the blink of an eye, everything changed. Maddox shifted, wobbled, and slipped from her arms. It happened too fast to stop. He fell 14 feet down past the safety net that had been designed to catch small objects, not a child. And then, he landed in the middle of the enclosure. Chaos followed. The dogs reacted instantly, their instincts kicking in before anyone could intervene. Panic erupted. Zoo staff rushed to the scene. A police officer discharged his weapon, trying to drive the animals back, but it was already too late. The attack lasted only moments. When the veterinarian arrived, Maddox was already gone. There was nothing they could do. Just minutes before, he'd been giggling in his mother's arms. Now, he was lifeless in a place meant for awe and delight. The zoo shut down the exhibit. The animals were secured, but the damage was irreparable. Elizabeth collapsed in grief. Jason stood frozen, his world shattered. The public recoiled in horror. And then, slowly, the questions started. Why had she lifted him over the railing? Why hadn't the zoo done more to prevent something like this? The investigation began. No charges were filed. The district attorney called it a tragic accident, a terrible convergence of love, curiosity, and miscalculation. But still, judgment came. Quietly, loudly, online, and in whispers. People pointed fingers, some at Elizabeth, some at the zoo. Both were grieving. Court documents revealed that zoo staff had expressed concern about the exhibit's safety years earlier. As far back as 2006, workers had seen parents lifting children in ways that could turn dangerous, but no changes were made. The exhibit remained open. The risk remained silent until that day. Eventually, the case was settled privately. No headlines marked its conclusion, just grief lingering quietly. In the months that followed, the zoo dismantled the platform. The painted dogs were sent to other facilities. The exhibit became history, replaced, forgotten by many, but not by Jason and Elizabeth. They refused to let Maddox be remembered only for how he died. Instead, they remembered how he lived, his joy, his energy, his absolute love for toy trucks. So they started collecting them. They asked people to send toy trucks for children in need, donations that would go to hospitals, shelters, families struggling during the holidays. The idea caught fire. Trucks poured in by the thousands. From across the country, strangers sent them, some wrapped in love, others with notes of compassion. Through the heartbreak, something beautiful emerged. Maddox's name became more than a headline. It became a reason to give, a symbol of kindness born from pain. And yet, the ache remains. A moment. That's all it took. One misstep, one decision, and a world collapsed. The grief of losing a child never fades. It only folds itself into the quiet corners of life, showing up in the softest memories and the loudest silences. Maddox's story is a haunting reminder of how quickly joy can turn to tragedy, how places meant to inspire can become sites of sorrow. But it's also a testament to love, how a family, even in the face of unthinkable loss, found a way to keep their little boy's light burning. Because behind every donated toy truck is the echo of a child's laughter that the world lost too soon.